I really love Silent Hill, but even the best games in the series have at least one flaw, so I went through and picked the single biggest issue in every game, at least in my opinion. There will be some spoilers here, though I try to avoid the big ones. The radio is probably one of my favorite things about the first Silent Hill. I'd hear the static rising, start searching the room, and imagine something worse than whatever eventually showed up. Once an enemy actually showed up though, I usually had no idea why my attack missed. There was a part I vividly remember where there was an enemy and I backed through a doorway to create some space. Then I let the auto aim try to orient Harry and swung once it was in range, and the camera cut while I was moving. By the time I realized Harry was facing something else and the enemy was closer than I thought, I'd already missed. I thought I was close enough, the camera changed, and suddenly I wasn't. I never got to the point where I could just look at an enemy and know, alright, this swing is definitely going to hit. Guns were obviously easier because I could stand farther away and actually see what I was shooting, but I also just didn't want to waste ammo on every random enemy, especially in this game. I was fine with Harry sucking at combat, I just wanted to know why the attack missed. I just started avoiding enemies because I didn't trust the feedback anymore, not because the enemies themselves scared me. And by the second half, that was basically just how I played the whole game. The town pulls me in every time, but it's the controls that keep pushing me away. Overall, I do like this game, but I am really excited to see what the remake's gonna do. The biggest issue in Silent Hill 2 is that Eddie was just sitting there eating pizza.
How can you sit there and eat pizza?
But seriously, for me at least, I can talk about the clunky controls once again, but even beyond that, it just feels like the combat itself never really escalates when it feels like it should. The enemies do get stronger, so I don't want to act like nothing changes at all. I just kept beating them with basically the same strategy the entire game. Lying figures spray acid and shuffle around, and I dealt with them almost the exact same way every time. Back off, wait for the animation end, move in, knock them down, kick them until they stop. Mannequins can stand completely still beside the furniture.
Are you blind? You can't see me!
And the first one genuinely got me because I thought it was part of the room. But after that, I was just waiting for every suspicious pair of legs to move and doing the same thing again. Nurses are faster and more aggressive, but I was still backing up, waiting for an attack and running in afterward. By Brookhaven though, the nurses were way more disturbing to me than anything in the apartments. And they obviously connect more directly to James and everything with Mary, and I like what they added to the story. But fighting them was still the same routine I'd been running since the first apartment building. I kept waiting for the game to put me somewhere that strategy wouldn't work anymore, but it never really did, and it kind of got repetitive. The game was apparently tracking all these tiny things about how I managed James' health, whether I checked out Angela's knife, how I treated Maria. I got the leave ending and had no idea which of my choices pushed it there. I just wish that the encounters played out a little differently throughout. Maybe this is something that's just for me. Maybe I'm playing the game wrong, but I don't know. I felt like I could have used a little more variety in how you actually approach each situation. For Silent Hill 3, my run was around like 5 or 6 hours. Claudia shows up in the mall pretty early, so technically the cult stuff has already started. It just doesn't become the main focus of the story until way later, and by then there isn't much runtime left. The mall's great, Hilltop Center's great. I'm not saying that the first half should have been cut, but once the story fully shifts to Claudia and the cult, there just isn't much game left. Heather and Douglas barely get time to deal with everything that happened between them, and this all feeds into the story's big turning point, but I feel like the story just kind of feels too compressed. Like, we know some of Claudia's background from the end, we know about her friendship with Alyssa, what her dad did to her, but I feel like I didn't know her that well as a person, and I also wanted to know more about Vincent as well. He clearly doesn't agree with Claudia on everything, but he's just barely around long enough for the game to really do much with that. And honestly, I'd rather the game move too fast and stop for like 20 minutes, explain the entire cult, and just drag, but I think it went a little too far in the other direction. Now, I just want to say that if you're enjoying this so far, if this video does well, I'm going to be doing the biggest strength in every Silent Hill game, plus the best and worst areas, so be sure to subscribe for that. For Silent Hill 4, I actually don't hate the idea of going through all the world again. Seeing the same places after everything with Walter could have been a really cool thing. The Subway World's second visit is where it fell apart for me first though. I understand why Eileen can't take every route, she's injured and the game wants me to protect her. It still made the whole level way more annoying. Find another path, get the train handle, go back for her, deal with Cynthia's ghost again, do the escalator part again with enemies still sitting on it. Going through the whole checklist in a single visit just wore me down more than it scared me. Water Prison was probably even more annoying because the whole place runs on ladders and vertical shortcuts, and Eileen can't use either. She'd take another route and catch up on her own, which sounds fine when you say it like that, but in practice she just keeps vanishing from view in a place I had already learned once, and I spent more time wondering whether she had made it than thinking about the prison itself. 10 inventory slots fill up fast, like a weapon takes 1, healing items take a couple more, and the anti-ghost items take up even more space. Every revisit just has me going back to the chest because of how many inventory decisions there are, and the worst part is room 302 is supposed to be getting scarier during all of this, but I still had to keep going going back there to use the storage box. Like, it was actively becoming haunted, and I still had to stop by because that's where all my stuff was. I think Silent Hill 4 also just tests out a lot of good ideas, like with the apartment changing, but the second half is just where it really starts to drag. For Silent Hill Origins, I had to think a little bit about what the biggest issue would be, but I think instead it kind of just removes too much of the original's mystery. I don't know if this is a controversial one, but Harry barely understands what happened to Alessa, and I actually do like that. He's finding random pieces of the story at the same time you are, and Origins keeps taking that same uncertainty and just kind of spelling it out for you. The Flores part especially bothered me. Once Travis actively started rebuilding it, he stopped being an outsider. It was like he'd been rendered into the tragedy as like a second main character. Even something as small as how Origins shows Alessa's fire made me feel this way. In the original, you mostly get fragments of what happened. Origins puts you inside the burning house, shows Travis finding Alessa, and has you carry her outside yourself. By the time I was done, I had experienced the event firsthand, and there just wasn't really any mystery left, which is also something I kind of like from Silent Hill. The mirrors took the mystery away in a different way. The first time I realized I could touch one and cross into the other world, I thought it was a clever puzzle idea, and I mean it is. But once that became the game's main way of moving between worlds, I wasn't wondering when the other world might take over on its own. I was usually just looking for the next mirror so I could switch it myself. I definitely don't think this is going to be a popular pick for the biggest issue in this game, and I think there's plenty of other issues that people could go with. I just don't really think this game needed a prequel or anything like this. In the older games, I could usually just decide an enemy wasn't worth dealing with and run past it. Homecoming takes that choice away from me way more often. You just gotta read the windup, time a dodge, land a counter, chain light and heavy attacks together. Alex controls like a way better fighter than Harry or James, so I understand why Homecoming has dodges, counters, and combos, but that doesn't explain how often the level forces you to actually use them. The sewers are where I just couldn't ignore it anymore. You can't move until the two lurkers are dead, which means the game won't even let you keep moving until you finish the fight. It keeps going after those lurkers too. Another needler shows up along the route, and by the time you reach the main drain chamber, Alex gets trapped alone with 3 more, and once those are dead, there's still more. I felt like I had to clear half the sewer of enemies before the game would finally just let me leave, and there wasn't a single stretch where I could just decide a fight wasn't worth having. Like, I get other games have more combat, like Silent Hill 2, for example, is more combat heavy, but at least it feels better then, and at least gives you some choices there. And I don't mind that Homecoming has more combat, but I just don't want every single hallway to force me into a fight. So I actually like that Shattered Memories kept the monsters out of the normal exploration sections. Like, it meant I could just look around, listen for clues, use the phone, and I didn't have to worry about what was going to jump out. And this isn't to say I hate when that's in the game either. I think this was an interesting take on it. So the first time everything froze over, it actually caught me off guard. I didn't know what was going on. The world went cold, the lighting shifted, and there was suddenly blue highlighted routes I was trying to interpret in real time. And I didn't know yet what a raw shot could and couldn't do, whether knocking something over actually bought me time or just wasted a second I didn't have. That's what made the first chase feel like I was actually scrambling, like I actually was stressed. But once I realized monsters literally could not show up unless the world froze over first, the normal section stopped making me nervous. You're never worried something might jump out while you're reading a note because you already know it won't. The final nowhere chase was where I got just completely sick of it. It's a maze of repeated doors and darkness, and by that point I wasn't even watching what was chasing me anymore. I was just trying to remember which sequence of doors worked through rooms that kept looping into each other. Dying there just felt like I was failing a memory test and getting sent back to try the sequence again. I really do like the psychological profile though, like seeing characters and even the monsters change based on my choices is cool, but once the chase started, I was just doing the same exact thing every time. So Downpour lets you explore way more of the town than the older games, which is something I thought I was going to love, and sometimes it absolutely works. The ribbon side quest is probably my favorite example. I started with a missing person poster, followed the ribbons to the streets and across the pier, and eventually ended up inside the apartment that explained what happened. By the time I got there, all those streets I'd crossed felt like part of the story instead of just space between story beats. Once that quest was over though, I went right back to checking the map and trying to get to the next actual objective. So for Pleasant Rivers, I'd already finished a few side quests by then, so I knew what the town could do when it was working, but outside of a quest, I was mostly just crossing another road, checking the map, fighting whatever version of the same few enemies I already knew how to deal with. Rice Street and the Port District blend together in my memory afterward, because nothing about crossing them individually gave me a reason to remember them. I actually remember the apartment and the pier though, because something important happened there. By Pleasant River though, I felt like I was just commuting through this, like I wasn't really taking the whole map in. The rain can throw more enemies at me, sure, but that didn't make crossing another random street any more interesting. I don't need every street to have a puzzle or some big payoff waiting. That would probably get annoying too. I just wanted more of the town to give me something to think about besides which route was fastest. And now for Silent Hill Book of Memories, widely considered to be the worst Silent Hill game that really isn't a Silent Hill game. I think the easy pick is just saying that this isn't a Silent Hill game, it's just a top-down dungeon crawler with the Silent Hill name bolted on, and none of that actually makes the series work, but I'd rather judge it as its own game, and even then, the actual moment-to-moment gameplay just was not fun here. I played solo the whole way through, so I can't speak to how much co-op changes the loop. Playing alone, every zone runs the same pattern. You clear a few rooms, you find the puzzle pieces, arrange them at the end. The room layout shuffle and clues change a bit, but once I got the structure down, it was like the same thing over and over again. The combat didn't really give me much reason to care about the repetition either. I leaned on heavier melee because each hit just felt better and it got me out of crowded fights faster. Weapons level up with use, but the process is slow enough and the game shows little of what actually changes that a weapon I'd used for an hour didn't feel meaningfully different from a fresh one off the ground. There's a stat system, a karma type, weapon weaknesses. Like, there is depth here, but does anyone really notice this? I still don't know exactly what the point of the game was. So Silent Hill: The Short Message is an interesting one, and I had to think a while for what the biggest issue is. I mean, it's literally a free game, it's not supposed to be long, it's not supposed to be super in-depth. I want to give a more interesting answer here rather than just say this game is too short or it's like a walking simulator. I think it's kind of just that it explains the horror too much. Like, I like when there's more room for interpretation, but it kind of felt like it was in your face here, if that makes sense. Like, the diary entries were the first thing I actually found, and they didn't bother me because they actually let me hear what her mother was thinking, which the apartment obviously couldn't show me on its own. Then the child welfare notice, and the news articles show up right after that, basically back to back, and they give you dates and explain that the child services got involved. So they do add new information. It's just that they arrive so close together that there's barely any room to like sit with any of it, to think about it. By the time I got to the article, I was learning more, but none of it made me feel anything different. None of those documents bothered me by itself, but it was kind of how quickly the game placed them back to back. And again, it's a short game, so it makes sense that it's doing that. But when it just feels like so in your face like that, where it doesn't really give the information time to breathe, it kind of brought down the experience for me a little bit. I'm not trying to knock this game for what it is, but I wanted to try and give a non-basic answer for this. So I really love the Silent Hill 2 remake. Like, when I first played this, it instantly became maybe one of my top 15 games of all time. Don't get me wrong, I love the original, but I definitely prefer the more modern style with better controls, the better graphics, the better voice acting, all of that. And I don't mind that the remake made areas bigger, because I don't think this needed to be a one-to-one remake. Like, it makes sense to expect more rooms and puzzles, but I felt like this game just went on for too long. Like, my first run was around 18 to 20 hours, something like that, and then the original took me close to half of that. Both versions take you through Brookhaven and its Otherworld version, but the remake expands both halves separately, and by a lot. At first it was fun because I was learning the building, I was finding the routes, and just seeing what this game had to offer. But by the time I reached the overworld version, I already knew the hospital, I knew what enemies were in there, and I was just like, alright, come on, like, I want to be done with this part of the game. Then the Labyrinth here, another one that I just do not like, and if I make a video going over the worst area in this game, I think you have a good idea of what it might be. But it just shows up when I want the story to start moving, like as it goes into the final stretch, but it just drags so much here. And beyond that, I just don't like the design here. The multi-step locks, turning the cube thing, which I just hated for whatever reason. A bunch of the new puzzles are genuinely better designed than the originals, and I like the combat encounters more than the first time. And it's not like it was one specific room that annoyed me that much. It just felt like it was kind of padding the game. Like, especially as I was getting towards the ends of a lot of areas, like I kind of want to just be done with that dungeon and move on to the next one. Still though, fantastic game. This didn't bother me too much relative to some other issues in the series. And one other thing I will say is I think there's too much combat here. Like, you do have choices, you don't have to fight all these enemies, and it's not as annoying because the combat feels a lot better here, it feels more varied, but it definitely feels a lot more action than the original. And finally, for now, we're at Silent Hill F. So this game is very interesting because after Silent Hill 2 really ramped up the combat, this kind of changes things. It very much wants you to focus on one enemy at a time, and of course the focus is melee attacks also, and you also have to keep an eye on your weapon's durability. So I think my biggest issue here isn't going to be the combat, which I know is a very popular pick, but it's how you really don't have a complete version of this game until you do multiple replays. And I don't think replaying a game is bad, but it's that not everyone can just replay a game. Like, I would have rather this game be a little longer than have to play through it multiple times. Like, I enjoyed Silent Hill F, but I didn't enjoy it so much where I just really wanted to replay it or anything like that. Also, if you want to play in the harder difficulty, you pretty much need to do a replay like with the New Game Plus. And this isn't something that's new to the series, because of course Silent Hill has had New Game Plus, where you can get different endings, you get different things after your first playthrough. But for example, Silent Hill 2 Remake, which I didn't play long before this, like after my first playthrough, I pretty much understood the game. I got most of what I wanted out of it, and an additional replay would have just changed up the gameplay a little bit, and maybe given me a little more context, or allowed for a different ending. So maybe that's not an an issue to some people, but for me it was. And that is what I believe to be the biggest issue in every Silent Hill game, at least until Townfall comes out. I'm not 100% confident on all of these picks, since I think some of them have multiple choices. I don't remember every single detail from every game. So if you disagree with me on any, I'd love to hear what you think. And also be sure to subscribe, because if this video does well, I'm going to do a biggest strength of every Silent Hill game, and maybe videos going over the best and worst areas in each game. Now, thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.